and every story can change the world. Together we are Global Speakers Talk.
Hello, friends, leaders, and change makers from around the world. It's an honor to welcome you to this gathering. My name is JB Herrera, and it's a privilege to open today's session of the third annual International Live Conference hosted by Global Speakers Talk. Global Speakers Talk began in 2021 with a bold idea from Anshu Tiwari to create a space where every choice, every voice, especially the unheard, could stand with confidence, dignity, and equal visibility. What started as a simple dream has grown into a global community where speakers, leaders, and storytellers come together not only to speak, but to learn from one another and uplift each other. The community brings together a powerful range of voices, seasoned keynote experts, emerging new speakers, experienced leaders, and individuals whose lived experiences carry lessons the world needs. Here, every story matters. Every journey is honored. So whether you're stepping onto a platform like this for the first time or you've spoken on stages around the world, this space holds each of us with the same respect. We also honor the people whose dedication helped shape GST from the beginning. Many people, Andrea, Lisa, Josephine, and others, have helped build what we stand on today, and we're grateful to all of them. Now, this community grows because people like you choose to grow with it. So if the mission speaks to you, if you feel called to invite or contribute, please share your interest in the chat. Your presence strengthens this collective effort. Now, as we begin today's conversation, I want to offer a brief introduction to the work I do and why today's theme matters so deeply to me. See, my work has always centered on one truth, that leadership begins within, that emotional intelligence is not about controlling emotions. It's about understanding the currents that shape our decisions, our relationships, and the environments we create. Leaders who cultivate emotional intelligence don't just change and manage teams. They create cultures where people feel seen, valued, and safe enough to bring their best thinking forward. And in a world that's moving faster than ever and divided more than ever, that kind of emotional clarity becomes a competitive advantage, not because it's soft, but because it's strong. So today's speakers embody that strength in their unique ways. They come from different backgrounds and disciplines, yet they all share a commitment to leading with awareness, depth, and purpose. So let's begin. And I'm wondering, do we have our first speaker? Appears to be missing. So I'm going to go, Kate. I'm going to introduce Kate Kendall, a leader who brings both empathy and sharp strategic thinking to every conversation she steps into. Kate is an expert in emotional intelligence and stress mastery, empowering visionary leaders and professionals worldwide. Combining NLP, breathwork, and practical insights, she guides individuals to enhance leadership effectiveness, manage stress confidently, and cultivate emotional resilience. Her approachable style helps leaders reconnect with clarity, confidence, and calm, creating lasting positive change in both personal and professional lives. Kate, welcome. We are honored to have you here. Thank you. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's a real privilege to be here in the room full of so many leaders, innovators, and creators to help, like people that are just helping to shape not just businesses, but the direction of, workplaces, families, and communities. So we talk a lot about performance. We talk about strategies. We talk about KPIs, culture, behavior, outcomes. But the truth is, every one of these things is influenced by our emotional world. Your emotions determine the quality of the type of leadership and leader that we become. So they influence how present you actually are when you are being a leader with your team, and how clearly you think, how well we actually communicate with the people around us and our teams, and how your team feels when they're actually around you. Are they inspired, and how you make decisions when you're under pressure, and how people's experience you when they're actually stressed, uncertain, or looking for actual guidance. So this is why emotional intelligence is one, that's really important, as well as emotional mastery. It's not optional for leaders. It's actually essential to be the best leader you can be. So let's, break this down a little bit more. So most people believe that emotional intelligence is simply being aware of your feelings, but emotional intelligence is actually about the ability to lead yourself before you lead anyone else. So it's the ability to stay grounded when everything around you becomes, reactive. It's your ability to listen without absorbing and taking on other people's things that are, their stuff, to observe without assuming, to speak without, projecting, and decide without collapsing into overwhelm. It's the ability to read the room, not from a place of fear, but from a place of actual awareness. So a couple of the pillars that are really, really important that I believe around your emotional intelligence is, number one is being your self-awareness. Can I recognize my internal state? Can I notice the difference between a genuine emotion and a conditioned pattern? And number two is self-regulation. Can I shift myself back into clarity when things get really intense and my stress levels are high? Number three is our social awareness. Can I understand what others are feeling even when they aren't saying anything? Number four is relationship management. Can I communicate in a way that creates trust, safety, and clarity? A lot of people have emotional awareness, Very few have emotional regulation. And that's a skill leaders really, need to learn to master, and is really important. Emotional mastery is not about being calm all the time. It's not about being emotionless, because we are emotional beings on the human experience called life. It's not about suppressing what we feel, but emotional mastery is about the ability to feel fully without getting lost in the feelings. Awareness says, I'm frustrated. Mastery says, what part of me is feeling threatened? What story did I attach to this moment? Awareness says, I'm overwhelmed. Mastery says, it's the overwhelm. Is the overwhelm real? Or did I say yes to something that wasn't maybe aligned with, my identity and in line with my beliefs and align with what feels right for me? Awareness is actual information. Mastery is transformation. And here's the part that most leaders don't actually realize. Your leadership is only as stable as your nervous system. Because under pressure, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your regulation. When your nervous system, feels safe, you lead from clarity. When it feels threatened, it leads from protection. Protection looks like being snappy, shutting down, micromanaging, people pleasing, multitasking, but not progressing, reacting instead of responding. Clarity looks like you're listening, you're hearing people, staying present, asking better questions, giving grounded direction, holding emotional space for others, choosing your response, not defaulting to the reaction. Mastery isn't the absence of emotions. It's the ability to lead through emotion with consistency and intention. There are three emotional patterns that you tend to see that sabotage leadership more than anything else. Number one is triggers. Triggers aren't weakness, they're actually mirrors. A trigger simply shows you where your leadership still has room to expand. For example, if you're triggered by someone when they're questioning you, it might be pointing to an identity built around needing certainty or perfection. If you're triggered by someone's tone, it may point to an old story around disrespect. If you're triggered by slow progress, it might highlight a pressure you're internalized. Triggers don't expose flaws, they actually reveal opportunities, if you can look at it that way. Number two is identity. Identity shapes behaviors. If your identity is, I have to hold everything together, you never delegate properly. If your identity is, I can't get this wrong, you'll lead from fear instead of actual vision. If your identity is, I must always be strong, you'll never allow support in and get people to help and allow people to help. Great leaders don't just upgrade systems, they upgrade their identity. And number 3 is language patterns. Your language shape your emotional world. If your self-talk is dramatic, catastrophized, or overwhelming, your nervous system follows it. Shifting your language is a fast way to shift your leadership state. I want to give you just a few, couple of tools tonight, 3 tools tonight that work in real leadership moments, in the hallway, in a meeting or a call, or just during, a conflict. And they're easy things that can really help you. And number 1 is the 5-second pause. Before responding to a charged moment, I invite you to pause. Those 5 seconds that you stop, you can from reacting and give your brain time to choose. This tool can save you from arguments, miscommunication, and emotional regret. Number 2, the state reset breath. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6, and repeat 5 times. This simple breathing method, this shifts your body out of the survival mode within 60 seconds. A regulated body creates a regulated leader. Number 3 is identity upgrade question. When under pressure, ask yourself, who am I choosing to be right now? Not who you used to be, not who you're triggered to triggers tell you to be, but who you're becoming as a leader. Every emotional, intelligent leader has asked this question at some stage. I want to leave you with this two reflections, and I encourage you to genuinely sit with them. Where are your emotions currently leading your decisions? And who would you become if you learned how to lead your emotions instead? Because leadership isn't just strategy and execution. Leadership is identity. It's emotional maturity. It's self-awareness turned into action. It's the courage to confront your own patterns. And it's the commitment to show up as a version of your future requires. Emotional mastery and intelligence isn't about perfection. It's about intention. It's about presence. It's about choosing who you want to be moment by moment without judgment. And that is leadership skill that changes everything. Thank you for having me, and I hope that was helpful. And please follow the link and come and connect if you'd like to learn more. Have a great day.
Oh, absolutely, Kate. Thank you so much. Everything that you talked about, organizing it in such a very clear, simple way. It's a complex issue. Thank you so much for putting that together. But more importantly, I think for the audience, you've given them specific tips that they can utilize right now to embody what emotional intelligence is and how they can improve themselves. So thank you very much. Your time and energy, I really appreciate staying up late.
That's okay. I love this topic. It's such a beautiful, as you said on the introduction, it's such an awesome topic and so much, but I just want to keep it really simple and have some takeaways for people. And I look forward to hearing all the other speakers. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kate. Take care.
Take.
So now what we're going to do is turn to Jose Herrera, whose work blends emotional awareness with a powerful sense of cultural and human connection. His mission to redefine leadership through purpose, pain, and unbreakable resilience. He's a former oil company executive with 35 years of experience and the former CEO of Citgo Petroleum. He was unjustly detained and held captive in Venezuela as a member of the Citgo Six over 20 years ago. It's an amazing story. He's inspired me, and it was with deep respect and honor that I welcome you to the stage. Welcome, Jose. Oh, I think you're on mute. Uh-oh. We're having some technical difficulties here. Jose's had some challenges earlier on.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm having some technical issues, so sorry about that. So, but well, okay, now we're back.
Yep, we're back. Okay.
Okay.
Lead us
Okay.
on, Jose.
Okay, well, we're going to have 10 minutes, correct? Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here. I had some technical issues to connect, but now we're back here. So I want to give this speech, begin with a small introduction to make a reflection to you. Because think if you're a leader and you're hearing this, maybe you will concur what I'm going to say to you, because every leader always face a moment in their life where the titles don't protect you. There's no strategy. You don't feel the guidance because we all go through those moments. But in my particular case, as JB in the introduction said, it went in a moment in my life 8 years ago where during a business trip I was kidnapped and I was held hostage during 5 years. So today we're going to talk about here of emotional intelligence. And for me, that became my cornerstone because at that moment I lost my freedom, I lost my control, I lost everything. You have to picture this. I was a guy with a successful career and in the midst of getting retired, and I did flew to a business trip. In the middle of the business trip, in the middle of a presentation, I was kept captive and accused to be an American spy. So everything was changed to me. So the emotional intelligence for me is not a theory. It doesn't have to do with the leadership books. It didn't come from a corporate seminar. It really, I needed to use it to survive. So today I'm going to try to explain to you some methods, some techniques that we used that really help us to survive, because emotional intelligence in the purest form is really understanding your emotions, understanding your fear and manage your fears. It's calming your mind, navigating the uncertainty, and leading yourself under any unimaginable adversity. That's exactly what happened to me. So the emotional intelligence is not about being soft, it's about being self-governing. Because let me tell you something. During those years and in the beginning of my captivity, I lost the control of everything. But didn't lose something that was myself, my self-governing. So the emotional intelligence is the ability to understand what you feel, what the other feel, and how they react to the chaos. And that moment for me was really a chaos. So when the world is squeezing, is where the emotional intelligence keeps you grounded. Because you can feel overwhelmed, you can feel burnout, you can feel with pressure. And maybe you're leading teams with fears and uncertainty. Today world is crazy. So I want to mirror you these techniques that we use that you really can help you in your life. So I'm going to talk about 5 pillars that for me are very important. The first pillar is the self-awareness, knowing your inner world. In my captivity, I had nothing except thinking. Believe me, I had a lot of time to think. So self-awareness for me became really my survivor. I had to begin to ask me what I was feeling, why I was feeling that, what was really scaring me, what were my strengths, and how I can control it in a daily basis. So most leaders doesn't make that conversation, doesn't have that inner talk, because there is a truth. You cannot manage what you are refused to acknowledge. That's very important. So self-awareness. Second pillar, self-regulation. Master yourself before you lead others. You cannot lead others if you don't lead yourself. So there were moments in my captivity that fear wanted to take over my mind, and I decided to maintain the control. I decided to keep sane in body, soul, and spirit. So when hopelessness felt louder, I got grounded by my faith. When I was having anger, I began to try to ask for the question why this was happening to me. And when the despair was knocking, I was on praying on a daily basis. So self-regulation is very important because you need to pause before speaking, you have to reflect before deciding, and you have to act with purpose, not with panic. So any leader that's hearing this, you cannot regulate your emotions if you don't lead with stability. You need to be grounded and focused. The third pillar for me is the empathy. The empathy is the most underrated form of power. Believe me, empathy is a superpower in my prison. Having the ability to maintain that empathy for me was a survival tool because even the guards, the people that had kept captive, they are people, they were human, they had their fears. I believe me, during years I had the opportunity to talk with these guys, and they were human having their own struggles. So empathy doesn't mean that you are going to agree with them, because I was not agreeing with that custodies, but I was trying to navigate with them. Empathy doesn't mean that you have to approve things, but you need to understand. Empathy means that you are putting in the shoes of the others and you're understanding where they're coming from. So if you're a leader, empathy allows you to first build trust. You can inspire loyalty with your employees because they feel that you are taking care of them, that you are understanding them. It allows to resolve conflict. It creates sense of belonging, very important, sense of belonging. The empathy is not a weakness. Empathy is influence. The fourth pillar for me is the social awareness. Somebody said, the first speaker said, the very important, read the room, lead the room. In the captivity, for me, reading the room was key. It made me survive, learning how to read the tone, the silence, the tensions, the energy, the intention. That kept me really, for me, was a survivor tool. So if you mirror that as a leader, having the ability when you are in a room, lead the room, read the room, and you can anticipate any conflict, you can navigate the cultural difference, you can navigate sense of resistance, you can communicate effectively, and you can inspire to the others. So that becomes a superpower. And that fifth pillar for me is relationships management. Leadership is about taking care of a humanity. I always mention being human being. For me, was a superpower that I learned there, that in a prison, it really saved my life because it allows me to have trust, collaboration, respect, unity with all the people that were surrounded with me, accountability. So leadership is not a title. Leadership is that relationship. You cannot lead with people if you don't understand them. So for during those years, I learned that fear was my alarm, but hope was my anchor. Faith was my compass. You cannot lead others if you're collapsing inside. Even if you're going in a dark moment, you need to try to have a stability. Because resilience is not suffering less, it's finding meaning in the suffering. The pain becomes your purpose. So today's world is noisy, it's divided, it's unpredictable. People are exhausted. There's cultural fragilities. Organizations are overwhelmed. We don't need leaders who are perfect. We need leaders who really have emotional intelligence. Leaders who stay grounded under pressure. Leaders who inspire confidence. Leaders who bring calm in the chaos. Leaders who lead with humanity, courage, and clarity. There's no frontier in leadership. So, coming to the end, I'm going to reflect to you: lead with heart, lead with strength, and lead with emotional mastery. I stand here. I was a former CEO. I was a man that lost everything. I was a man who survived those 5 years of captivity. I was a man that has had to rebuild his life and find his purpose. And here's a message for you: emotional intelligence is not an option, it's essential. It's your strength, it's your anchor, it's your advantage. It will become your legacy. Lead with awareness, lead with discipline, lead with empathy, lead with courage, lead with your heart. Because leaders who master emotional intelligence don't survive, they transform the world. So if you want to know about me, you can connect with me, joseconnect.com. Thank you very much, JB, for having me here.
Thank you, Jose. Your message is always inspiring for me. Thank you for sharing your pillars. Your experience was horrible, but the way you dealt with it is an inspiration for really everybody. Thank you again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Alicia Hurt, brings an energizing voice to the conversation, someone who leads with conviction, compassion, and authenticity. Alicia is a psychological well-being practitioner with 30 plus years of experience in cognitive behavioral, mental, and emotional health. She's a member of Cambridge Who's Who and Marquise Who's Who in America. She's dedicated to elevating emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. Her soulful poetry and storytelling continue to inspire resilience and healing in countless lives. It is my pleasure to welcome Alicia Hurt to the stage. Welcome, Alicia. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. There you
All
go.
of that. I'm
All of
so
that. Keep on
proud to
going.
be here. And I'm so proud to be amongst all of these wonderful, wonderful experts on emotional intelligence. So I'm going to get right into it. Once upon a time, there was a 50-year-old who was diagnosed with a chronic stress stroke. Her life changed in that moment. When she informed her leader of this medical condition, she was told there's no way that the story was fabricated to take 3 days off. It was in that moment my life changed. I was told I needed to be at the Wednesday morning meeting, and if not, I would no longer have a job. This created a moment where I realized that I did not practice emotional intelligence for me. Over 30 years, I practiced and helped so many change their lives based on this concept of emotional intelligence. But I forgot about me. So let's get into why this is my passion at this moment. Everybody has talked about self awareness, self reflection, self regulation. These are the things that what emotional intelligence is all about. It is a mindset. I had to create a sense of agency. I had to take back control of my emotions because I was so angry. I felt powerless each time I would step into the presence of this leader. So that's why, this is why you have to be emotionally intelligent as a leader. Now let's talk about some things, how I've built my company, Elevation Resiliency Coaching, because you cannot be resilient as a leader until you have mastered your emotions and emotional intelligence. So let's talk about these few things, the bucket list for emotional intelligent leaders. Of course, they are based on those principles, the focus of self awareness, reflection, and regulation. So, a bucket list is about your original story. And this is how I look at it. Your bucket list is your original story. And each one of us have a story that sets you apart as a leader. But either whatever your story is, it's going to create such a legacy for you as the leader of your company. So let's talk about defining moments. Let's talk about what it is that makes you the most emotional, intelligent leader that you could be. So, with that being said, what is your bucket list about? What does it entail? Now, when you practice self awareness and self reflection, let's talk about consciousness. Okay? So, I want you to choose yourself. No matter what your story, your origin story is, in your bucket list, I want you to choose consciousness. I want you to grant yourself grace, but stay mindful of your own emotions as well as the emotions of your team. That's very, very important because it will have a great impact on you as a leader and your team. Focus on building self management and self direction that will help you to respond to those chaotic conditions, to those emotionally stimulated situations, and gain tremendous insight into your triggers. Be conscious of these things at all times. Focus on self care. That's very important as a leader. Put it in your bucket list. Focus on self care. Because if you don't take care of yourself, how can you manage and take care of your team? How can you react to an individual who's going through something? When you react, think about how that makes that person feel. Embrace your willingness to learn from your mistakes. The second thing principle I want you to focus on is active listening and empathy. This is all about compassion. Manifest your ability to emphasize while intentionally ascertaining the needs, perspectives, values, as well as the vision of others. Don't take advantage, don't forget about, don't devoid of your team's vision as well. That's very, very important because practicing mindful listening can brand you as a loyal team leader. Active listening, having empathy for people, it intentionally helps you motivate and inspire your team. Very important. Choose empathy over apathy at any point in time. And that includes for yourself. Practice clear communication. When there's conflict, practice clear communication. Always constructive criticism. It's how you present yourself, it's how you react to a situation. Feeling of belonging and have a meaningful purpose, which once again establishes loyalty from your team. Always be vulnerable and transparent. So when you show compassion, you can be vulnerable You can be transparent. That shows that you have compassion for your team members. So always remember that. Like I said, I'm coming from a place of agency. Have that agency where you have control of you and you know how to honor the emotions of your team. That's emotional intelligence. So your original story, it reflects who you are. It reflects your values. It reflects the importance of why you're doing what you're doing and why you set out to accomplish your purpose in life. And that has to include your team. So I'm going to close here by saying to you, whatever your personal story is, it matters. Create your bucket list so it can shape your leadership style and your leadership narrative. Your bucket list reflects awareness, regulation, and all of that. But I want to end by saying this. In the words of one of the most emotionally intelligent person that I know, well, not personally know, but that has really helped shape who I am as a poet, my hero, rest her soul, Maya Angelou. She said, your legacy is every life you touch. I'm Alicia. You are emotionally intelligent. You have a bucket list. You have a story to share. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to be here. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Oh, Alicia, thank you so much for being here. I
Thank you.
love the depth of what you've just talked about with the bucket list and everything is so amazing. And the very specific elements and key techniques that you've used are really going to be beneficial for everybody. So I want to strongly encourage you. You see the link crawling across the bottom of the screen. Please connect with Alicia. She's a wonderful person who can help you build that resiliency. So look her up on LinkedIn, take advantage of the opportunities that she can provide to you. This is an amazing time in the world. We live in a place where emotional intelligence is one of the most important skill sets that you can develop. And you don't have to go through the same kind of thing that Jose went through to develop it yourself. Follow some of the techniques that Alicia has talked about today. So Alicia, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to having further conversations with you in the future.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity and I just appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. So now what we want to do is turn to another great speaker, Terrace Crawford. He's a leader who understands how emotional intelligence animates connection, collaboration, and meaningful impact. He's a visionary leader, best-selling author, and serial entrepreneur. He's the founder of Sidekick and Seek 365, and where he equips purpose-driven leaders to grow their impact, influence, and income while advancing the kingdom through faith, strategy, and bold action. Welcome to the stage, Terrace.
Hi, how's everybody? Hi, JB.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
I
It
love
is
it.
it is an honor to be here. I just wanted to commend all of the other speakers, and it's great to be among such a great audience. And I want to thank Anshu and the whole team here at Global Speakers Talk for this opportunity.
Awesome. For it.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. And, if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that leaders are not superheroes. We're all human beings, aren't we? sometimes with unstable Wi-Fi connections and challenges, as many have experienced today. But, something happened a few years ago. Let me take your mind back to the pandemic. We all experienced a lot of the same things, did we not? In fact, the playing field was leveled. We were all leaning on Zoom in pajama pants, eating Pop-Tarts like it was our job, and praying that we didn't run out of toilet paper. How weird was that? But behind all the craziness, something real happened. People didn't need us to be perfect. They needed us to be emotionally present. And for me, you guys, that truth became painfully clear during one of the darkest seasons of my life. So just a few years ago, in the height of the pandemic, my life took a wild, crazy, unexpected turn. I started experiencing one day what doctors thought were mini strokes. My colleagues were a little freaked out. My family, my friends, they didn't know what was going on. So they rushed me to the hospital because not only was I having what appeared to be mini strokes, but I also was experiencing some schizophrenic episodes. That was crazy. Honestly, it was terrifying. Not just for me, but for the people closest to me. I felt so confused, so exposed, like I was unraveling at the seams. I could literally see my mind drifting away. I thought I had completely lost it forever. But the scariest part wasn't just the physical symptoms. It was that I no longer knew who I was. I was at the time, a business and ministry coach, which thankfully I'm still doing today. But it was a full-blown identity crisis, if I'm being honest. Looking back on that, it was very painful, very traumatic. I was hospitalized. I was forced to step away from ministry. I was forced to step away from business. I was forced to step away from everything that seemed so familiar to me. Well, doctors later discovered that I had a rare strand of COVID that not only affected my body, but it attacked my literal mind. All my mental faculties seemed to just break down and evaporate. Research later showed that less than 10% of COVID patients globally experienced anything like I did. So I have a unique story to tell. And yes, getting those answers and seeing the research was reassuring, and it certainly helped me. But the road ahead wasn't easy. Doctors worked on healing my body, but God had another plan. I'm a man of faith. I don't know how many people of faith we have here gathered, but God started healing my inner man. He started healing my soul. And I'll never forget, looking back on it now, what a friend said to me. He said, Terrace, the greatest healing you ever experienced was when you stepped away from everything, stepped away from social media, stepped away from your business, your ministry, and you had to heal. God had to restore you. I spent 3 years in scripture. I spent 3 years praying and crying. Every part of me wanted to resist that, you guys. I didn't want to disappear. I didn't want to lose the momentum of what I had built as a leader. And I certainly didn't want people to forget about me. The enemy tried to take me out, for sure. He knew the calling on my life. He knew the kingdom assignment that God had for me. And in that dark space, God whispered something to me and said, Terrace, you have to understand the enemy has tried to sift you as wheat, but I have rescued you and I'm setting your feet on solid ground. So what I did was I had to pull back. I went dark online. I dove into scripture, and God began to rebuild me from the inside out. I can tell you honestly, I cried more in those few years than I have in decades. But I chased God harder than I ever had, even as a pastor. And honestly, losing my pace, losing my platform, and even some people in my life was worth the deep healing that God had planned for me. I was so appreciative. Just recently I was talking to one of those close pastor friends that I hadn't heard from in years. He reached out and he was stunned at the work that God had done in my life. but I wasn't, because I knew the one who rebuilt me. I knew my identity had been restored. I knew that I got clarity. I had a renewed purpose. I had a new community. And today I get to help business and ministry leaders step into that same kind of clarity through my coaching so they can walk into their bold kingdom assignment. So if you're in a storm right now, I just want to encourage you right now in this moment, your story's not over. And that brings me to emotional intelligence, which is what today's all about. You've heard some good stuff today from my fellow speakers. Because long before COVID ever hit, long before that pandemic that we all experienced, God taught me a lesson about emotional intelligence. In fact, it was on the side of a mountain. It was about 20 years ago. Man, am I dating myself. Back in college, I took an outdoor leadership class. And when I signed up, I thought it was meant to be leadership outdoors. Maybe a nice walk, maybe a team building exercise or two, eating granola bars together, talking about the squirrels in the yard. No one told me it was going to be major hikes in the mountains. That's not a class, you guys. That's a survival show. And to make things worse, it seemed like everyone on the team, everyone in my class, all of my colleagues at the time were professional level hikers, except for yours truly. They had expensive gear. They had all the nice, cool clothes and accessories. Me, I just had enthusiasm and my sneakers. The cool thing about this trip, as I reflect on it today, was that each person on this team had the opportunity afforded to them to lead part of the trip, to lead part of this adventure. And so when my turn came, my professor said to me, Terrace, you're going to do something special. I want you to lead everyone up this mountain today. Yes, you are in charge of the hike. Now, we're not talking about just hanging out in the yard. We're talking about in the mountains, one of the highest elevations. We're talking like, hours of a climb upward, steep, rugged. I mean, it was not easy. Again, my entire group around me were like a group of REI ambassadors, professional outdoorsmen. Really? Me? You want me to lead this hike? I felt completely inadequate. But here's the thing. Leadership is not about having every strength there is. It's about leveraging the strengths around you. So that's what I did. That was my strategy. So what I did was I delegated based on the gifting and skills that I observed. So you had a guy who was really good with a compass and map. I put him on navigation. There was a kind of a nerdy fella who was all about the gear. I let him be the equipment check. I said, hey, you be in charge of making sure we got everything we need. For the person who was really good at encouraging, I said, that's your role. You encourage us. And I let the experienced hikers, these REI ambassadors, I let them set the pace of the hike. My role was just to be in charge of communication, just to be in charge of coordination, just to be in charge of that connection. Well, I can tell you the first 3 hours went beautifully. I thought, wow, I'm really doing this. I'm trekking up this mountain. I'm leading the group, everything. Everybody's engaged in their roles. They're doing it well. And then the weather turned and it became oh so nasty. Rain started falling, torrential downpour. The visibility dropped. It was foggy. The trail became slick. We were wading in water. People were exhausted. I mean, exhausted, absolutely spent. And we were not even probably 3/4 of the way up the mountain at this point. It was horrible. And I was their leader. So what I decided to do was I said, hey, let's take a pause. Let's stop. Let's circle up. Let's do a group check-in. And what I found was that the group was actually split in half. Half of the group, these professional hikers, as I called them, they wanted to keep going. Oh no, we're not stopping. We're not turning back. The other half, absolutely in tears, spent begging to tap out. And quite honestly, I was probably in that group. I was like, yeah, let's just call it a day. This is a half of a win. We'll take it. So at that moment, it stopped being about hiking. This was about people. This was about real emotions and fear, safety for sure. And it was certainly about conflict. This, you guys, was a true leadership moment. And I realized something that day. I didn't need to be the strongest hiker or the fastest or the smartest or the one with the best gear. I just needed to be emotionally present. So here's what I did. Number one, I listened. That's been mentioned as a key trait of somebody who's emotionally intelligent. Listen deeply. Don't rush through, because a lot of times, you know how it is. Somebody will be talking to us. They'll be telling us a story or a problem or whatever. And the wheels are spinning, aren't they? We're already thinking of our response. We've already cut them off in our head. Don't dismiss them. And here's another thing. I look back now and I observed that what I did was I listened to everybody. And I began to empathize. That's another key thing that emotionally intelligent leaders do. They empathize. They say things like, I hear you. I see you. Yeah, that makes total sense. You know what? You're not wrong. It creates a safe environment. It creates an inclusive environment. And it acknowledges people as people. And also made a decision rooted in care, not ego. So we ended up turning back, not because we couldn't finish, but because we couldn't finish safely. And that was really one of the main goals. You see, leadership's not always about proving that you could reach the top of a mountain. It's about protecting the people around you. It's about looking out for their personal interest. Is it not? You know, when we got down from that mountain and the hike was over, my professor, my professional guide, he pulled me aside and he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, Terrace, you have an incredibly high emotional intelligence. You know what? That was the first time I had ever heard those words. He validated my emotional intelligence as a leader. And that, my friends, changed my leadership forever. You see, my COVID story, that traumatic event that I shared with you about, that taught me emotional intelligence within myself. My mountaintop story, my hike, taught me about emotional intelligence with others. And it revealed some truth. You see, leadership rises and falls on emotional intelligence. Teams don't quit because of workload. Your colleagues don't tap out because they're too spent most of the time. But they often quit because of emotional mismanagement. People want leaders who create emotional stability and safety. They can lead when it's sunny. Well, emotional intelligence leads well when it rains. So I want to make this extremely practical for you guys listening to me as I close. Because I realize that there's so many people listening to us globally. We're all over the scales as it relates to emotional intelligence and our leadership. So you might be asking, how do I grow in my EI as a leader? What can I begin doing today? Well, you've heard some of it already. You practice a pause. You take time to think through what's happening before reacting, before correcting, before making that flippant decision. Just take some time. Take it all in. Again, being the best leader in the room does not mean that you have to be the one with the first response. It's about being the one with the right response. And then start asking this question. I think this is a great practical exercise, even on a daily basis. Looking back on your day, ask questions like, what emotion led my leadership today? Or maybe you get to the end of the week and you say, what led my emotion, or what emotion led my leadership this week? And you can begin to categorize. Yeah, today was all about fear. Or today was all about frustration. Boy, today was all about my insecurity or confidence or whatever. But let's put positives on those. Let's work to amp up and create some better responses and some better strategies, better techniques in becoming that EI leader. So when you're in a room, when you're leading, read the room. That's often one of the best techniques. Look around at the faces. Look at the energy. Look at the posture. Sense the tension. Maybe even be silent. Here's what we know. Leadership is really about 10% of what you say, but it's actually 90% of how you read the moment before you say it. And certainly validate. Using phrases like, I hear you, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate your honesty. That is game changers. As my professor would alter my life and my leadership, I never knew how much that validation of my emotional intelligence would change my life. So, one last tip here. Be a person who asks this question. What is it like to be led by me when I'm under pressure? What is it like to be led by me when I'm under pressure? And that one answer, my friends, can transform your leadership forever. And again, all of us as leaders, it doesn't matter if you're the smartest, it doesn't matter if you're the most talented or most polished. The ones that we really remember aren't the ones with the great IQ, I venture to say. Although we see you, it's the ones who are present, the ones who are empathetic, the ones who are self-aware, the ones who are safe, the ones who are emotionally steady, the ones who are human. Anyone can lead when the path is smooth. When the smooth terrain, smooth sailing, we can all be the leader. But emotional intelligence is revealed when everything's falling apart. And if you can lead people well in the rain, my friends, people will follow you anywhere. Thanks for letting me share today. It's been an absolute joy to be with you here on Global Speakers Talk.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your words of wisdom. Thank you for showing how we can climb the mountains of our own lives when we understand our roles and stay connected.
Yes.
Reminding us to take that pause, right? Being the best leader is the person who has the right response, not necessarily the first one. So I invite everybody to connect with Terrace at terracecrawford.com. He's written books and he's leading people in his media group as well. He's not going to talk about that, but I will. So Terrace, thank you so much for all the work that you do. I know that it's critical for people to understand how they can apply all of these principles in their lives, because there's a bigger connection here. There's a connection not only for personal and professional, but for your faith and how it works in community for the world. That's what we're about today. That's what Global Speakers Talk is about. And Terrace, you are the embodiment of what we are for. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, brother. Blessings to all.
Take care. Well, let's continue today with Catherine Holt, who brings a thoughtful blend of emotional depth and practical leadership wisdom. She's an international speaker, author, and champion of women's empowerment for over 30 years of dedication to gender equality and leadership. And I've had the great privilege of speaking with her in the past. She has inspired many and countless individuals, and me personally as well, to awaken my inner leader and speak truth, transform lives. She's passionate about placing women at the forefront of leadership Catherine empowers them to rise with resilience and thrive despite the challenges that they all face. So please welcome to the stage Catherine Holt. Catherine, please welcome.
Thank you, JB. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are in the world. And thank you for joining us today. I'm going to really focus a little bit more on emotional intelligence for women, because I think women, through social conditioning and the way we're brought up, are really good at this. And I want to point out why and encourage you to use your emotional intelligence even more. Women already use emotional intelligence every day. We understand unspoken concerns, we create inclusive spaces, we create relationships and collaborations, and we navigate conflict with diplomacy, and we build trust. And yet those same skills are often dismissed, undervalued, or used against us sometimes. But when we use emotional intelligence intentionally, it becomes influence, it becomes clarity, it becomes power. So basically, emotional intelligence simply means that you can recognize your emotions, you can understand them, manage them, and help others to do the same in a supportive way. And I hear from almost every woman I coach, I'm the emotional support system at work and at home, and no one sees that as leadership. So let's name a few of the real problems that women face. We're interrupted more. We're expected to manage emotions around us without any recognition. We often lead without a title, but carry the responsibility. We are praised for empathy, but it can burn us out. Like that, I'm sorry you're having a bad day. What can I do to help? When I've had a bad day too. So today I want to show how emotional intelligence isn't a soft skill, as it was often referred to in the earlier days of leadership. It's a leadership advantage. And I'm going to do that by highlighting a few of the key characteristics of emotional intelligence, which many of the speakers have already discussed, but I'm going to give it the perspective from a women's point of view. So basically, self-awareness is knowing what's going on inside you. It's noticing when that inner critic gets too loud, when you say yes, even though your whole body is saying no, or guilt arises when you set a boundary, or you silence yourself to make others feel more comfortable. It's the moment where you notice your feelings instead of getting swept away with them. I used to tell my daughter when I would get frustrated sometimes when she was little, Mommy needs time out. I didn't realize it at the time, but what I was doing was separating myself from the emotion so that I could understand it and rather than act from it. And you can't change what you can't see. So self-awareness to me is the step one of any emotional intelligence, because everything else builds on it. That kind of leads us into self-regulation, which some of the other speakers have talked about. And self-regulation is really choosing your response. It's the shift from reacting to responding with thoughtful intention. Example, someone interrupts you in a meeting or repeats your idea and claims it is their own. Instead of shutting down or getting angry, you take a breath and you say something like, well, sometimes I say, thanks for recognizing my genius, but that's more in my inner voice than my outer voice. But I might say something like, thanks for building on my earlier point. That's not sarcastic, it's not passive, it's just claiming your space. And I want to tell a quick story about when I worked in Texas politics and I was presenting to a group of male legislators about women's health care. My nerves, my anxiety were off the charts. My self-awareness helped me notice that anxiety. My self-regulation helped me choose how I showed up anyway. And I stood there, nervous, trying not to show that I was shaking, and remembered something that the governor of Texas had told me. She was Ann Richards, and she was a woman leader among a sea of men. And she said, just remember, when you look at them, they put on their pants one leg at a time, just like everybody else. That calmed me. So self-awareness is the insight. Self-regulation is the action. You know what you feel and you decide what to do with it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is empathy, because once again, women are kind of conditioned to be empathetic. But empathy is really understanding others without absorbing them. And what do I mean by that? Women are really great at listening to learn, recognizing unspoken emotions, meeting people where they are, standing beside someone during hard moments. But what's the challenge? We often take on those emotions as responsibilities for others. We become that emotional support system for everybody. We absorb emotions that aren't ours. We get pulled into people pleasing and fixing instead of empowering. So what I tell women is that we have to remember to care without carrying. And what does that look like? Okay, so when somebody is in a crisis, I try and catch myself into slipping into that fixer mode because I really love fixing other people or fixing their problems. But instead, I now have learned to ask, what support do you think you need? So that kind of focuses it back on them and makes them think about their issue. And when I worked in the UN, I still work in the UN, but we have something we live by, some words we live by. And that is, don't tell me what you think I need. Let me tell you what I need. And those are so important, to let them tell you what they need instead of imagining. We also need to recognize emotional overload and set boundaries so we don't burn out, because we need to be present, but we don't need to be drained. And that's where empathy becomes a leadership skill rather than emotional labor. And empathy often melds into social awareness because they use a lot of the same characteristics. And social awareness it's an interpersonal intelligence. It's the part that lets you read the dynamics and shape conversations. As other people have said, reading the room. And I think women are usually very well attuned to reading the room and noticing the undercurrents, pausing to reset the energy, seeing who's withdrawing and who's dominating, and adjusting what's going on in the room so that all voices are heard. We navigate conflict diplomatically. I'm sure you've been called in to mitigate a family dispute or an argument in the household or at work. And we're good at moving conversations towards solutions. So when you use your what I call EQ, emotional intelligence, in this way, you shape conversations, you shape outcomes without needing a title. This is presence, this is influence, and this is leadership. So to put it all together, it's all about knowing yourself and leading yourself. When you do that, you can understand others. You can help them navigate their emotions. You can use these emotions to inspire. You can use these emotions to get people to unite around a common goal. And that's basically what leadership is. Leadership isn't sitting in an office like the old curmudgeon barking out orders. That's not leadership anymore. Forbes, Harvard Business Review, all the studies show that the most important characteristic of leadership nowadays is emotional intelligence. Kinsey did a study of, I think, over 1,000 different HR people around the world, and they identified that also. And they said that women scored way higher on the emotional intelligence scale than men. Sorry, men, but that's the study. I'm just sharing the information. So Knowing that these are powerful skills and learning to use them, or not use them because we have them. We just need to be more aware of them, and we need to channel them more often and be cognizant that these are leadership skills. They're not just something we do. So these are powerful skills, but the transformation lies in using them consistently, especially in high stakes moments, like that moment when I was talking to those legislators, being able to really channel my self-awareness and my self-regulation to still present effectively was essential to me getting my job done. But this takes practice, and sometimes it takes a buddy for reflection, for accountability, to help us see in ourselves what triggers we have, what sets us off, and reining it in so that we can lead with more impact. And that's the work I do with women every day. I help them turn these insights into influence, confidence, boundaries, and clarity, so they can lead from what I call their zone of greatest influence. That's the level of leadership where you stop reacting to the world around you and start intentionally shaping it. It's a place within you where your values, your strengths, and your purpose meet. It's where your leadership becomes undeniable. So if anything here resonated with you and you're ready to explore what your next level of leadership could look like, I'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you so much for being here today, taking time out of your day or your evening or your morning. And we really depend on our listeners. So thank you, listeners. And thank you, JB. And thank you, Anshu, for putting this together.
Our pleasure, Kathy. It's amazing what you've been able to accomplish in raising the awareness for what women have gone through. It's amazing when you really think about how many, I guess, historically, how women have been taken advantage of. And what's really important to me, and especially after our first conversation, was I've learned so much about myself, connecting with that part of who I am, simply because of the message that you've delivered. So I want to thank you from myself, because I think that helps me work with women better and raise them up and change how men look at things too. So again, thank you very much. And I really, really encourage everybody to take advantage of what Kathy's offer is. So please go to Catherine-Holt.com/gift. Pay attention to what Kathy has said. What she's talking about is critically important for us to build a better world. So once again, Kathy, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, JB. I love working with you and with Anshu, so thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is shift to Michelle Oira, whose work highlights the human dynamics that shape trust and collective experience. So she's from being a bank executive and chief risk officer to life investment coach. Michelle now helps leaders make meaningful deposits in their life bank. Leadership, impact, family, emotional strength, and social connection. As the Philippines' first bank personality and wealth and joy coach, she helps transform high achievers into emotionally intelligent leaders who lead with purpose, presence, and human connection. So please welcome to the stage, Michelle Oira. Michelle, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, JB. Yeah.
My
So
pleasure.
let me begin with a question. Have you ever reached the point where, you were winning and successful, but somehow you felt like you were losing yourself in the process? Where sometimes your leadership looks strong on the outside, but your energy, your relationships were quietly being depleted. Many leaders feel this way, but very few ever say it out loud. Now, most leaders never set out to really feel disconnected, not from their teams, not from their families, and definitely not from themselves, But somehow along the journey, success gets loud, expectations become heavy, and the very people who once felt driven start to feel tired, misunderstood, and sometimes lonely at the top. After 25 years in banking and risk leadership, I discovered something very powerful. I realized that the greatest risks we face are not really financial in nature, they're human. And the most important assets we manage are not our careers, not our portfolios, not our KPIs, but is in our relationships. Now, a few years ago, I was at the peak of my corporate career. I was senior vice president, chief risk officer, a seat in the boardroom. I was a voice in the management. My professional life was doing great. But one day, life confronted me with a risk I was not prepared for. It was a few days before we went into lockdown. Pandemic um, happened. Pandemic risk response was under my shop. And one phone call from my sister-in-law in Canada changed everything for me. It was the day I learned that my daughter was silently struggling with depression, and I didn't see it. And that moment broke me, not because I was weak, but because for the first time I realized this truth. Leadership means nothing if the people you love feel unseen. But I'm a believer that when storms happen in your life, not all storms are meant to destroy you. Others are meant to clear your path. And that moment of awakening for me pushed me to understand emotional intelligence, human behavior. It led me from the highly technical risk management space to delving deep into personal development, becoming an NLP master practitioner, a bank personality coach. And eventually, all these learnings led me to create my life's bank framework. So the experience didn't just change my parenting, it changed the way I led teams, made decisions, connected with people. It changed the way I led my life because I believe the first mandate of leadership is to lead our lives well. And today I want to share with you 3 leadership lessons that transformed the way I lead every day. And these lessons can apply whether you're a CEO, a manager, a parent, a business owner, or someone leading yourself through a challenging season. The first lesson is emotional strength is not soft, it's actually strategic. You know, as many of the speakers said, leadership used to be about control, certainty, and authority. But in today's world, it demands something different of leaders: emotional awareness. Because let's be honest, people don't leave companies, they leave emotional climate. When you have a leader who avoids conflict, he loses influence. When you have a leader who reacts, you destroy psychological safety. But a leader who self regulates, that's a leader who inspires trust. Because emotional strength is a leadership skill. It shapes every decision, every conversation, every relationship. And I'm going to share with you now like one simple practice that you can do. Name the emotion before you respond to it. Because once you can name it, you can navigate the emotion. Now, the second lesson is that leadership without understanding people is not leadership at all. In the years I was in corporate and I've led teams, what I realized is that people are not difficult. People are simply different. Different personalities, different motivations, different values that show up in the way they work. And when leaders don't understand this, you have misunderstandings happening everywhere. And that is why when I discovered the bank personality system, I found it very powerful because it makes you see things through the lens of their values. And I realized that people show up, they communicate not just with words, but based on their values. The bank personality system stands for the blueprint, action, nurturing, knowledge, personality types. So if you look at the blueprints, they're the ones that want structure. Actions, meanwhile, want results. The nurturing types want connection, and the knowledge types want data and logic. So each of them correct in their own right, but looking at their different colored lenses. So imagine if you're leading a team without realizing that every person in the room is speaking a different language. That changes everything, isn't it? And this was a tool I wish I discovered early on in my career. It could have saved me a lot of energy, a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of conflict and argument. And so now this is something I share to companies, to business leaders, to empower them with the tool. Now, the third lesson is that success is a portfolio. So we have to learn to invest where it counts. To be a better leader, you have to recognize that your life is made of accounts. These are what I call your life bank accounts: leadership, impact, family, emotional strength, and social connections. And you need to make sure that each one is well funded so that you don't run on empty. Because I know of some leaders, they're brilliant at work, brilliant at what they do, but their family account is empty. They're emotionally strong, but their relationship overdrafted. You can have leaders who are technically good, but people hate them. So you may have influence based on fear, but that's not leadership at all. And as a leader, you don't really need balance because I believe there's no such thing as work life balance. Just like your financial bank accounts, when you look at each one of them, it's never going to be a perfect balance down to the last cent. But you need to make sure they're well funded to help you go on. And in life, you need that alignment. So I ask you today, which of your life account needs a deposit? So make sure you constantly invest in it. Because leadership, is not just a title. Leadership is the way you show up. It's you. You in the rooms you walk into, in the conversations you have, and especially in the relationships that matter the most. And you can lead companies, teams, but if you lose yourself, it's not worth it. If you build success, but you lose connections, it still is incomplete. So leadership starts inside of you long before you influence anyone outside of you. So today, I hope you remember one thing: you invest where it counts. Because honestly, the world doesn't need more leaders with titles, it needs more leaders with humanity. So thank you.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for that wonderful message. I didn't realize until I started doing research on what you've done in the past how important and the information and experience that you have from that professional world and applying it to the personal side is an amazing strength that you have. So thank you very much for that your insights, and those practical ways that we can actually, implement that wisdom that you've uh, uh, experienced and shared. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you also, JB.
My pleasure. Looking forward to staying in touch. Okay. So if now that we've experienced these two completely different ways of looking at emotional intelligence, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Rania Hotite. She's a global leader known for her bold thinking and her ability to navigate complexity with both strength and grace. She's a globally recognized multi-award winning serial entrepreneur, an impact leader, advisor, writer, and international speaker. Her trailblazing leadership has been honored by the White House, the United Nations, UK House of Parliament, and Global CEO Excellence Awards. She has 2 decades of entrepreneurial experience. She brings deep expertise in transformational leadership, emotional intelligence, strategy, and guiding global organizations through human-centered innovation. Today, she empowers visionary leaders and business leaders through her elite coaching programs, transformative workshops, and commanding keynotes, offering sought-after strategic insight at the intersection of innovation, equity, and legal impact. Let's please welcome Rania Hotite. Welcome, Rania.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's such an honor to be with you today. I've spent my career building and leading organizations through uncertainty, innovation, and transformation. If there is one lesson in leadership that I learned over and over again is this: what separates good leaders from extraordinary ones, it's not strategy, it's not experience, it's emotional intelligence. Not even talent has shaped my leadership impact more than this skill. And today I want to take you through the practical tools and insights that shaped not only my career, but the way I lead people, make decisions, and create environments where teams can truly thrive. Number 1 is self-awareness, understanding your inner landscape. Emotional intelligence begins with the ability to understand and regulate your own emotional world. And for many leaders, including yourself, this is the hardest part. When I first stepped into executive leadership, I believed I needed to show strength by being composed all the time. But emotional composure is not the same as emotional awareness. I learned this most clearly during my early years scaling my companies. There was a moment, one of those high pressure weeks where everything was on fire, where I realized I wasn't actually listening to what my emotions were trying to tell me. Stress was signaling a capacity issue. Frustrating was signaling misalignment. Overwhelm was signaling the need to pause, not push harder. Once I learned to pause, label my emotions, and respond instead of reacting, my leadership shifted. Decisions became clearer. Communication became calmer. Conflict became information rather than a threat. Self-awareness is not about controlling emotions. It's about understanding them so you can lead from clarity, not reactivity. 2, self-regulation and responding instead of reacting. Understanding yourself is powerful. Regulating yourself is transformational. One of the most important lessons I learned as CEO was this: your tone sets the emotional temperature of the entire organization. I saw this especially during periods of crisis, like funding challenges, operational disruptions, team conflicts. People will look to me not for answers, but for emotional grounding. The moment I walked into a room, the room shifted. So I developed practices that allowed me to lead from a regulated state. Pausing before responding, asking clarifying questions, separating facts from fear, naming the emotion, not acting it out. And over time, something incredible happened. Teams mirrored my regulation. Meetings became more productive. Conflicts became conversations. People brought issues sooner because they felt safe, not judged, not dismissed. This is self-regulation and leadership. It's not perfection, it's intentionality. 3, empathy, the foundation of trust and psychological safety. Empathy is the skill that transforms leadership from authority to influence. When I led a global team across cultures, time zones, and lived experiences, I learned quickly that people do not follow leaders they fear. They follow leaders they trust. And trust is built through empathy, not sympathy, not niceness, empathy. One of my most pivotal leadership moments came during a period of rapid growth. Our workload had intensified, and I noticed my team was burning out, not because of capacity, but because they didn't feel seen. So I shifted the conversation. Instead of asking, "What are you working on right now?" I began asking questions such as, "How are you doing?" And more importantly, "What do you need from me to do your best work?" These questions opened doors. Productivity increased, retention improved, and people began stepping into more leadership because they felt supported and seen. Empathy doesn't weaken leadership, it multiplies it, because people who feel valued contribute at a higher level. I'm going to say this again. Empathy doesn't weaken leadership, it multiplies it, because people who feel valued contribute at a higher level. So remember that. 4, conflict and turning challenges into growth. Conflict is unavoidable, but emotionally intelligent leaders see conflict not as a disruption, but as data. Every conflict reveals misaligned expectations, unclear communication, or unmet needs. One of the hardest lessons I learned as a leader was avoiding conflict doesn't create harmony, it creates tension underground. Early in my career, I tried to maintain peace by smoothing things over, but unresolved tensions returns with interest. I eventually built a simple process for navigating conflict. Slow down the conversation, separate the person from the problem, seek understanding before seeking solutions, identify what each person is actually protecting, and rebuild the relationship before rebuilding the plan. And the result? Team left conflict feeling more connected, not less. The goal is not to avoid friction, it's to metabolize it into growth. 5, leading with purpose. That's the heart of transformational leadership. Emotional intelligence is not complete without purpose. Purpose is what anchors your decision making, your resilience, and your ability to inspire others. In every major challenge I faced, global expansion, product pivots, financial pressure, moments when everything felt uncertain, purpose was what brought me back to clarity. I would ask myself, what is the impact I'm here to create? Who is affected by the decision I'm making today? What values must guide this moment? And without fail, those questions recentered me. They reminded me that leadership is not about being perfect. It's about being principled. When you lead from purpose, people trust your direction, teams rally around the mission, decisions feel aligned rather than forced, and you create an environment where people bring their full selves to work. Purpose fuels empathy. Purpose grounds resilience. Purpose elevates emotional intelligence from a tool to a philosophy. So today I invite you to lead differently, to lead more consciously, to lead with more heart, because the future of leadership is not about hierarchy, control, or perfection. It's about self-awareness, empathy, trust, purpose, and connection. As leaders, we carry an extraordinary responsibility, not just to guide strategy, but to shape culture, empower people, and cultivate environments where human potential can thrive. And emotional intelligence is the multiplier that amplifies every part of that mission. It allows you to understand yourself deeply, to build trust and psychological safety, to navigate conflict with clarity, to lead with empathy and purpose, and inspire loyalty, performance, and real impact. This is not theory. It's practical, it's actionable, it's transformational. And I am standing here today as a living proof that emotional intelligence can take you from surviving environments that are not built for you to leading in ways that redefine what's possible. So lead with clarity, lead with empathy, lead with heart, and watch what becomes possible, not only for you and your not only for your team and your organization, but also for your future self. Your team will feel it, your organization will feel it, and your future self will thank you for it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Rania. Thank you for that powerful reminder of what leadership can look like when rooted in emotional awareness, both personally and professionally. Really, your experience truly is an inspiration and an example of emotional intelligence in action. So thank you for being here. I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that they can connect with Rania in these areas. So these are her social connections through Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. What she has accomplished in her life is truly amazing. She has a massive impact in the world. And what we need to do is take leadership examples like what Rania has done in the past, what she's doing today, and what she's going to do in the future, and connect with that and bring that into our lives, both personally and professionally. So thank you again, Rania, for being here. I really appreciate your time and energy. And you've really uplifted the whole event. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Shabi. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely. You take care. Okay, now we turn to Sam Mitchell. Sam is the founder and host of a globally recognized podcast, Autism Rocks and Rolls, with over 21,000 downloads. Living with autism himself, Sam uses his platform to inspire and advocate through authentic conversations. His guests include Dr. Temple Grandin, NASCAR driver Armani Williams, and WWE legend Mick Foley. He's a TEDx speaker, entrepreneur, and writer. He's passionate about spreading awareness, empowerment, and acceptance worldwide. Sam, we are honored to have you with us. The screen and the stage are yours. Welcome.
Hey, bud, thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. So why don't we get started? What if I told you that the most powerful skill I developed in my entire journey podcasting, running a nonprofit, speaking on stages, connecting with families and communities isn't communication? Isn't it confidence? And isn't it organization? You'd think that, but the most powerful skill I've ever built is simply this: understanding my own emotions. You can rehearse your message, memorize your words, and perfect your delivery. But if you don't understand yourself, your message will never truly connect with anyone else. Emotional intelligence is the real foundation of influence. And for me, as a person with autism, it became the superpower I didn't even know I was building, or nor knew I had. A few years ago, Autism Rocks and Rolls was growing fast. I was doing speaking events, podcast interviews, and projects that reached people far beyond my hometown. From the outside, it looked smooth and successful. But inside, I was constantly wrestling with one big question: what am I actually feeling? There were days I couldn't tell whether I was nervous or excited, overwhelmed or energized. Emotions felt blurry and tangled. And anytime someone asked, "Sam, how did you feel about that event?" I struggled to answer honestly. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't always know. One day after a major talk, someone asked me that same question, and that was the moment it hit me. How can I help others understand themselves? If I'm not fully understanding myself, what's the point? Not only did I realize what was the point, that, my friends, was the turning point. That was when emotional intelligence became something I didn't just talk about, but something I intentionally practiced. The first step in emotional intelligence is simply recognizing what you feel and why you feel it. For me, emotions were never missing. They were simply packed tightly, like puzzle pieces with no picture on the box. I had to learn to name them, understand them, and work with them. People with autism often work harder at emotional self-awareness because we process stimuli more intensely. A sound, a tone of voice, a shift in environment, these details hit us faster and more powerfully. That heightened sensitivity can be overwhelming, but can also turn into a remarkable strength. And when I finally began unpacking my emotions, really asking myself what was going on internally, everything changed. I became more grounded, more confident, more connected to myself. I realized that emotional intelligence isn't about being less emotional. It's about being honest with yourself and giving your emotions the respect they deserve. Most people think communication starts with what you say, but real communication starts with what you feel. When I speak on stage or record an episode of my podcast, audiences connect most deeply when I speak from emotion. When I let the real Sam come through, not just the rehearsed lines, they connect when I share my challenges, my victories, and my honest experiences as a person with autism. That was when I got diagnosed 4 years ago. People remember how you made them feel, not just what you said. When you understand your emotions, you communicate with more clarity, more authenticity, and more power. When you express yourself honestly, others open up in return. And when you acknowledge your own feelings, you build trust with the people listening to you. People with autism often develop a unique emotional communication style. Some of us express emotions less traditionally. Some of us express them very intensely. Some of us communicate emotion better through writing art, movement, logic, or focused interest, which is something those with autism do. Emotional intelligence is about changing who we are. It's about using the communication style that works for us and honoring the emotion behind it. There's a myth that people with autism don't understand emotions or don't express empathy, but that myth comes from misunderstanding, not reality. People with autism feel emotions deeply, sometimes more deeply than others. We notice things people overlook. We care passionately about what matters to us. We empathize intensely, even if the way we show it is different. Many of us work with emotional intelligence, not because we lack emotion, but because the world expects emotion to look a certain way. But emotional intelligence isn't about fitting into that mold, it's about expanding it. When workplaces, families, and communities start to value emotional diversity, real inclusion begins. People stop expecting one communication style. They stop using one definition of empathy. They stop assuming that emotional expression has to look one certain way. Instead, they listen, they observe, they meet people where they are, not where stereotypes say they should be. Emotional intelligence becomes a bridge between different ways of thinking, different ways of feeling, different ways of being human. And bridging those differences is exactly how we build more inclusive workplaces, classrooms, friendships, and communities. So here's my challenge to every person in this room. Start practicing emotional intelligence today. Not eventually, not when life gets easier, not when things feel comfortable, today. Take a moment and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Where is that emotion coming from? What can I learn from it? Because emotional intelligence isn't about perfection. It isn't about avoiding tough emotions. It isn't about never getting overwhelmed. It's about understanding yourself well enough that you can grow, connect, and communicate with authenticity. And whether you're a CEO, an educator, a parent, a leader, a student, or a person with autism, or a person who is listening today, emotional intelligence will change the way you interact with the world. When you understand yourself, you unlock the ability to understand others. And when you can understand others, you have the power to create real impact. Thank you.
Well, Sam, I got to tell you, that's awesome. Your unique experience provides us with a way to look at emotional intelligence in a new way. And thank you for reminding us that emotional intelligence really is a bridge between people and organizations. And that bridge can bring people together, not only individuals, but, communities. And eventually, as we build that bridge, it bridges the whole world. So thank you for your great comments today. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Now,
all. I appreciate your time and hope everyone took something valuable from my mini session today.
yeah, thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Well, we now come to the final speaker of today. But before we do that, I wanted to remind everybody that we will have a short panel discussion at the end of the final speaker. So if you're able to stick around, we'd love to do that. So now, our final speaker is Ilona Selka. Now, she's not here today, but she has provided us with a recording of her presentation. So with your permission, we'd like to see if we can use our technology in a way that we've never done before. So please welcome Ilona Selke through a video that she's provided to us. Anshu?
Welcome to the third annual live conference where global speakers talk. My name is Ilona Selke, and I will be sharing today a very powerful tool to you that you can practice with me right now, right here in the next 10 minutes. We think of emotional intelligence as differently as from logic and mental intelligence, right? What is emotional intelligence? It goes hand in hand, but most people don't know how to use it positively, especially when we're stuck. In our day and age, we are inundated with information. We are receiving so much stimulation that it is hard to notice if we're feeling anything anymore. We're going through the day, we're getting things done, but how do we actually feel? And sometimes we're overwhelmed by negative feelings and the sense of stress, and we don't know what to do with those feelings. Because primarily, I tell you, we are evolved beings that once thought with our emotions. The origin of our thoughts do not begin in our head. They actually begin in our gut. So I'm going to teach you 3 steps that you can take that we teach in Living from Vision worldwide globally since 1989 successfully, whether it is to lay people, psychotherapists, or business people. How to handle your emotions when you might feel stuck and wish to move forward with a power that you cannot purchase in any store. So here we go. When we think of emotional intelligence, we need to just go into more of feeling levels. Most people aren't used to feeling themselves, so I call it the old age world name, scanning, body scanning, just noticing what am I feeling when I hear this particular news or information. Let's say I had a client who said, I just can't see anything out for the trees. I'm overwhelmed by too many details and I can't get the overview. Well, I didn't try to say, well, think of all the details, write them all down, sort them, organize them by categories, which you might use if you use your left brain. No, I said, how about you start feeling what you're feeling as you're feeling that overwhelm? And so as you go inside, and that's what I speak in my TEDx talk about as well, when I wanted to swim so close to dolphins, I couldn't get any closer because, and I didn't know that, I was actually afraid what would happen if they got really close. This person was losing oversight because there were too many things going on. So we need to just slow down, take a breath, and do what we in Living from Vision call stop, look, and choose. One of the first techniques we learn how to get a handle on our co-creating life power. So if you stop, you step out of the movie, you step out of the emotional embroilment, and you become the person, the soul that becomes the awareness. You become aware of maybe the emotion that isn't working. And you tune in and say, I'm feeling angry, sad, hurt, mad, glad, sad, fear. One of the primal emotions. What is it that you are currently feeling? Maybe it's an unclear feeling, but you are taking time for yourself to source your emotional intelligence. Next, you take it like anything and take a look at it and say, oh, and this is number 2 question in my TEDx talk. You ask your negative emotions or your positive emotions what they actually really want. I also use it when talking to children. I couch it differently. It's not like, what do you really want? It's what that feeling of anger actually really want. If it could have what it really wanted. You see, our emotional brain is a little bit younger than our intellectual mind, and our position may require of us. Deep down, as you may know, we all want safety, love, care. And these emotions are no different from us. They want to share something of value. If we listen, we can then steer our ship into the direction of fulfillment. So our emotional intelligence requires that we stop, we look, we listen, and then we find out with awareness, what does this feeling actually really want? And in the case of that overwhelm, the person wanted to be sure to make the right choice, but had too many choices to make from. When they said, what would it feel like if you did make the right choice? It wasn't about what choice to make. It was preempting the future and jumping into the emotional state that person would have if and once they made the right choice. That the person could do. They could imagine having made the right choice, feeling fulfilled, empowered. I, in my case of swimming close with dolphins, I would feel safe, even if a dolphin was close. I imagined how I could just be safe and a dolphin would be safe. I spent 1,000 hours underwater after doing those exercises with dolphins this close. And so when we pre-create the future, we bring the emotional wisdom of the future into the now. It's the completion, it's the fulfillment that now informs our choices. It's the other way around that we normally might think of using the logical approach. So go into the end fulfilled state of where you want to wind up once you get your choice, and settle into that feeling. Let it become a felt sense. Even if it isn't there right now, you can pretend. All of us on that emotional level can be like children and imagine something that isn't there yet. When you generate that holographic emotional blueprint, you start pulling out of the ethers a futuristic coupled quantum informational field that now feeds into your present state now. It is one of my other many things I do is teaching about quantum entanglement and how you can use that for your personal health as well as for your business. We've been teaching, my husband and I have been teaching this work since 1989. You can simply apply this by sourcing your wisdom of your emotions, pre-imagine the future fulfilled, and take a moment to listen to that sensation. Stop, look, and then choose. And this is the technique that you need to practice now every single day. Go in your morning meditation and say, how would I feel if that choice or that strength would already be manifest? And in your emotional strength that you now pre-create, you will start having an ability to see things that beforehand were closed off. Now you might get ideas, have people come into your life that say, how about this? And you get ideas of doing something in the direction of your dreams that then manifest it. Instead of reacting from negative emotions that we don't pay attention to, you are now listening to the wisdom of your emotions and letting them guide you from a fulfilled state. Now, that's using the power of your emotions in your daily life, whether that's in a business choice, in your way of dealing with your children or with your partner. Recreate and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Take a deep breath, step back, become the observer. And once you decide this is the emotion I am feeling, ask it what it really wants. It is as simple as that. Rehearse that good feeling every day and let it inspire you into the future fulfilled, and let the coupled future into the now create the reality of your choice. We here at Global Speakers Talk share information that inspire, create change, and are applicable tools that you can make to make a difference in your personal life and for those around you. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you for my next talk about mental health equality in our day of digital confusion. I see you soon. Bye-bye.
Ilona is an amazing speaker, has some great insights, and really is a voice for change in this world that is really confusing and in divided as well. Well, we've heard from remarkable speakers today, each bringing their own story, their own wisdom, and their own lived understanding of what it means to lead with emotional intelligence. And now what I'd like to do is bring those voices together for one final time. The roundtable is really where insight becomes dialogue. It's a space for honest exchange and thoughtful questions. So let's lean in. Let's explore what emotional intelligence looks like in practice, not as theory, but as the daily intentional work of leading with awareness, empathy, and courage. So I'd like to pose this question to our panel today. Looking across our different experiences, what's one core emotional intelligence skill that you believe is the most critical for today's leaders, and why? And then as a follow-up, how can a leader intentionally build that skill even when under pressure or in conflict? So given that question, who would like to begin? Go for it, Jose. You're on mute.
Yeah. For me, the most important trail is the empathy, the being empathy. Because when you are empathetic, you can understand the other. Because being empathetic doesn't mean that you're accepting the other. You're understanding them. But that puts you in the stage that you can understand what are the emotions, what are the feelings of the other. And that builds trust, that builds loyalty, that builds sense of belonging. So it's a superpower, the empathy.
Awesome. Okay. Kathy, yeah, please.
Yes, I agree that empathy is very, very important. But I think that really the primary focus of improving your emotional intelligence is knowing being aware of what your emotions are, how you are managing them, and or are you reacting, or are you intentionally thinking through the actions you're going to take based on what you look around the room and see the situation or who you're talking about. Instead of that gut reaction, it's actually thinking about how to respond. So I would say that is kind of the foundation, and all the others build from that.
So how would you build, if that's one of the key elements in emotional intelligence, how does a person build that self-awareness?
I think it starts with self-reflection. It just really looking at yourself, looking when things happen, how do you respond to them? And actually being conscious and saying, wait a second, why did I react that way? I think Rania talked about that quite a bit when she presented. Why did I react that way? What triggered me to react that way? And just really taking the time to notice yourself. We notice, especially women, we notice everybody around us all the time, and we're constantly taking temperatures of the room, of the people, of our family, but we don't always take the time to stop and say, what's happening inside of me?
Awesome. Okay. Alicia, how would you answer that question?
Thank you. I agree with Jose and I agree with Kathy. And I think the two interact in many, many ways. And I would say personally, with me being always have been hyper empathetic, okay, which I think has a major significant part of what my story is. And with that being said, I realized that empathy is a major part of a bucket list, of a leader's emotional intelligent bucket list. But you have to understand when there's signs of such things as distress, overwhelm, and things of that nature, and burnout. So you can be empathetic and be able to feel the room, the culture, but don't forget to feel yourself. And that's where Kathy's self-awareness come in to me. And also with doing that, you're able to support your team and to make sure there's no burnout on that end. And that's what I feel is very important in emotional intelligence.
That's awesome. Rania, how about you?
Let me unmute first. For me, really, if I had to choose one of the skills, it would definitely be self-awareness, because every other emotional intelligence skill grows from it. You can't regulate what you can't first recognize. You can't communicate clearly if you don't understand your internal state. And you can't practice real empathy if you're projecting your own fears or assumptions or blind spots onto other people. So self-awareness is the anchor that allows leaders to respond instead of react. And in today's environment of constant change, that ability is what builds trust and stability and clarity for entire organizations. And to answer your second part of the question, how we can intentionally build that skill, as leaders, a leader builds that skill by creating intentional micro pauses and moments of pressure. The mistake that many leaders make is trying to fix a situation before regulating themselves. Instead, take a breath, name what you're feeling, and ground yourself before responding. That 5 to 10 second pause shifts you out of reactivity and into clarity. Then you seek understanding. Ask one meaningful question that opens the conversation rather than escalating the conflict. Over time, those small habits compound. You don't just get better at navigating conflict, you begin shaping a healthier emotional culture for your entire team, and you also begin to shape your own leadership and your own authority in ways that other people trust you and look up to you like never before. So that would be my answer to both of those questions.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Michelle, please give us your wisdom here.
Yes. Hi. So I actually agree with Rania when she said everything starts with awareness. And, it's the same when I was in the risk practice. You cannot manage anything you're not um, really aware of. And in leadership, as I say, the first one you need to lead is yourself. And you cannot lead yourself unless you have that awareness. And a lot of times, there's a lot of tension and conflict in teams simply because everybody's looking at it from their own filters and their own colored lenses. And when you look at it, nobody's wrong, nobody's right at the same time. It's really just different perspectives. And for me, the sooner everybody recognizes the fact that we're different, um, everyone doesn't need to conform to you. It's really that moment that you can leverage synergy and diversity. And it takes, that self awareness as a first step for you to be able to do that and go beyond yourself.
I love that. That's great. And it strikes me as I'm listening to all of you talk about self-awareness and empathy and the elements of emotional intelligence. Um, in the past, right, historically, we would say everything in life would be absolutely perfect if everybody did it exactly the way I want you to do it, right? And unfortunately, that methodology and that mentality has permeated us for, at least in this country, for as long as we've been here. And as human beings, even longer than that. So having that self-awareness and understanding and being aware of fitting in somebody else's shoes are really the critical elements. But that, in my experience, it's being able to take that and turn it into something else. You've provided us with some really great skills, like take a breath, take a couple of seconds, right? In my world, where I come from on the philosophical side, it's experience, understand, that's that breath, then judge yourself and your reaction, then evaluate that reaction and emotional connection, and then decide and then act. So EUJEDA. When you implement those steps in that order, it's the actual steps of what we're talking about taking a breath, not reacting emotionally. But now you can actually proactively take steps that will benefit not only yourself, but the people around you and the situation as you find yourself in. So again, I want to thank you all so much for your time, your wisdom, your experience, for being here. This has been an amazing experience for me to host. And I know that all of us at Global Speakers Talk are so lucky and beneficial to have had you here. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, JB, and thank you, Anshu, for putting this all together. It's been a labor of love over many, many months. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
JB.
you.
So much.
Thank you
So
much. Bye-bye.
in closing today, what I'd like to say is, again, thank you to our panelists and everything. What we've heard across the stories and the answers is really that emotional intelligence is not a soft add-on to leadership. It's really the foundation. That leaders who invest in self-awareness, empathy, and honest emotional clarity build trust, unlock collaboration, and create spaces where people thrive rather than just perform. And recent research affirms this. Teams led by emotionally intelligent leaders show greater cohesion, motivation, and sustainable results. So here's the challenge I leave with all of you today who are listening. Pick one emotional intelligence skill that resonates most closely with you today. Commit, not as a goal you'll reach, but as a practice that you'll begin every day. With each conversation, each decision, and every moment of tension, bring a posture of awareness first. Because leadership, real leadership, isn't measured by reports or results alone. It's measured by the capacity to hold human dignity in the room, to see people's potential, and to align action with values. So if we leave here today remembering anything, let it be this: we lead not just to direct outcomes, but to nurture possibility. Thank you very much for being here today. And let's carry this conversation beyond the room into every team, every community, and every life we touch. Go forth and give emotional intelligence to everyone around you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Together we are global speakers talk.